We're recording 2 weeks in a row. We are recording 2 weeks in a row. We might just get a hang of this thing. Hi, Nitesh. How has life been?
Life is good. I spotted something really interesting yesterday. Let's just start on a tangent because why the hell not? We deserve a reward for our consistency. No, I saw a red Ferrari Purosangue yesterday. That might not
Yeah.
sound like a big deal. The Purosangue is Ferrari's first SUV, and for the longest time, Ferrari said we are not going to make an SUV because that's not who we are. And then they saw just how much money Lamborghini printed with their SUV. So they
That is
finally
who we
said,
are,
okay,
right? Where the money is, we will go. That is who we are.
yeah. And Ferrari has not been like a purist racing car manufacturing company for decades. So it wasn't all that weird. They finally gave in and said, "Oh, all right, fine, we'll make an SUV," but they don't call it an SUV. They don't allow journalists who are covering the car to call it an SUV. To my knowledge, there are three or four of these in India at the moment. The first of which was delivered to the Ambanis and featured quite prominently in that wedding, which went on for a year. It's a really cool car. Genuinely, it's a really cool car.
Did you make an offer on the spot?
I'll get to why this was so interesting. First of all, rare car, sighting it in what is a very low key neighborhood in Bangalore was thrilling. It was completely unexpected. The most interesting thing, and the reason it's relevant to us here now in this conversation, is that it had BH plates. Do you know what those are?
BH.
Yeah, the Bharat
Bhopal. This is from
number
Bihar.
plates. No, not Bihar. Bihar is BR. BH stands for Bharat. So let's say your company has offices in Hyderabad, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka. Telangana, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka. And you buy a car here in Karnataka, and then you're transferred after 2 years to your Chennai office. The cops there are constantly going to keep stopping you because
Hmm.
you are driving out of state plates, right? And they want to know if you've overstayed your welcome. So the Indian government, after years of lobbying, finally said, all right, we're going to introduce a new series. This is called the BH series. And it's only for employees of government organizations, central government, and also companies which have locations in multiple states. So, in theory, you only pay for that year's road tax. And then, whichever state you're going to be in for the following year, you go there and you pay the road tax there.
Why can't everyone do this? If I've paid 15 years of road tax in UP and I
Uh-huh.
want to move to Bangalore and my car is 10 years old, therefore there are 5 years left, why can't one website just do the math and transfer that 5 years worth prorated to Karnataka? Why do I have to apply for an
Because
NOC? And
these are, they are state subjects. Again,
yeah,
the
but
different
state subjects
RTOs
can be managed by one
through
whatever
the infrastructure exists, but it's more lucrative for things to stay the way they are. Let's just put it like
for
that.
individuals. Yes,
Yeah, for
probably
RTOs.
not for the
Because
government.
in theory, now you're going to come here. Let's say you're moving from Delhi to Bangalore. You're going to re-register your car here. So you need to engage with the RTO people here.
Yeah,
And then your 5 years worth of road tax that is left over in Delhi, you can claim a
which
refund
I
for
will
this.
never get. But of course, yeah, I will have to engage with people
There
there.
is a mechanism, and so you need to go and engage there
Yeah,
as well, right? So
yeah.
this works beautifully. There is already a central database, the Vahan portal. So in theory, this should happen with like 3 clicks. If there are no challans or cases pending on your car, why can't it just be transferred? Good question. Doesn't work. But my larger point is how broken is the tax system when clearly this guy must be at least a director, if not a
Hmm.
C-suite employee, right? And it could very easily have been bought on the firm's assets and claiming that 15% depreciation every year, offsetting income tax against it. But I'm sure he must have done the calculations and realized that it's cheaper this way. For reference, the off the rack price of the Puro Sangre is between 10 and 12 crores ex showroom. So
Oh,
if
ex showroom.
yeah,
Shit. That
so
adds
if
on insurance. Otherwise, I was just going to do this, man. If this were on road, I would have done it already. Yes. I went to the when you started this, I went to the Ferrari site to look this car up,
Uh,
and I found a really irritating cookies prompt, so I just
yeah.
turned back. You
Uh,
lost customer Ferrari because of your site's UI UX, because you had an irritating cookies prompt. You just lost yourself a customer.
oh, another small little segue. Uh, Ferrari and Porsche have mastered the art of options loading. So the ex-showroom price that you see for Porsches or Ferraris includes nothing. It doesn't even include Apple CarPlay or Android Auto.
Hmm.
Everything is an extra, and it costs ridiculous amounts. Ridiculous. Like,
Tires?
no, whatever is legally mandatory is there.
Ah. Hmm.
They meet the definition
Spares,
of
so they stopped giving like a long time ago. Spares, so the more expensive the car, the less likely you are to have a stepney.
And usually sports cars and supercars, they have run flats, and they assume that you're a phone call away from help anyways. So you're not going to be stranded by the side of the road in the middle of the night. It's
Did
not
you
going.
see that video of the Mahindra stuck in somewhere near Rotang? I believe it
The
ran out of
EV,
parts.
the
Yeah,
EV, yeah,
yeah,
it's a steep learning curve. Very low temperatures drastically affect your range. Yeah, someone found out the hard way.
yeah. I don't envy that guy. I'd probably be. I can imagine myself. Right? I don't know these things, so I'll just do the maths. Keep 500 kilometer here to here. I have to figure.
हाँ, चल
I
जाएगी
won't
वो।
be like 500 का 300 हो जाएगा. No, I will not be doing that math. There are so many people who are like, why would you take an EV there?
No, this is
And
great, right? It's a cautionary tale for everybody else. And that guy is never going to be stranded in cold weather again. So it's good all around. Maybe he'll start carrying a power bank like he does for his phone.
Ambrain 20,000 mAh.
Get your additional 10 feet.
Doesn't have a USB-C port. Chalo. Story number one. What has been going on?
Yeah, my first story of the week just broke yesterday after a long, long courtship period in which there were many potential suitors. AkzoNobel finally sold or closed the deal to sell its India Paints business to JSW Paints.
Hmm.
AkzoNobel owns the Dulux brand and a couple of other smaller brands. Akzo is a global paint giant. They have been going through some rough weather globally for the past 3 4 years, and so one of the strategic decisions they took was to finally exit the India business. It is doing all right. Dulux is considered like the positioning is that it's a premium brand here in India,
Hmm.
and yeah, after many people were interested, and then a few rounds of negotiations happened, and they dropped out, including Pidilite, the makers of Fevicol, including other paint companies, including private equity giants. Finally, JSW Paints basically struck a deal and said, "Yeah, we will acquire Axo's India business." The
There's been a lot of consolidation, right, going on in the
Yes,
paint space.
that's the thing. I was actually kind of waiting for this deal to close because it marks like almost 3 years of disruption that has been going on in the Indian paints industry. Although things really shook up in the last year or so, but we'll get to that. Let's go to this in a nice
Yes,
chronological
sorry for
manner.
jumping the gun.
Asian Paints, at least in the decorative paints business, Asian Paints had like more than 50% market share for the longest time. In fact, much before, this is not stock advice, but much before I knew anything about stocks or investing, I'm talking mid 2000s, it was considered like universal advice. Okay, whatever else you're buying, just buy a little bit of Asian Paints as well because they have a monopoly,
Hmm.
and that's not going anywhere. And what do you know, that was true for almost 2 decades from when I first heard it, and then suddenly it wasn't true anymore. JSW, which is into a lot of these heavy manufacturing businesses, they announced that they're going to try and disrupt the paint space. at the time, this was 2021, 22, I think. At the time, there were no challengers. The paints industry had like kind of settled into this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ranking, and there was no change at all from year to year. Everybody had found their space, and everybody operated in Asian Paints shadow. Like Asian Paints set prices, and they decided what the trend is going to be for the coming year. They decided when technological innovation is going to come in, like those pigment mixing machines were brought in by Asian Paints, and then they became the industry standard because of the sheer distribution strength and market share that Asian Paints had. So JSW, it was actually a gutsy move when they did it. That we're going to challenge these guys. They set up manufacturing capacity. They tried to set up a dealer network. I wouldn't blame them. Their strategy was, since Asian Paints is like has the mid to upper segment of the market, we're going to do a more value positioning, a more budget offering, and try and reach the parts of the market where Asian Paints is not such an outright giant. Where there are smaller brands, where there are local brands, we'll try and consolidate there. But since it was a listed company with so much firepower, Asian Paints did not let them get a foothold. In fact, JSW even filed a complaint against Asian Paints that they are not letting us appoint dealers. If an existing Asian Paints dealer starts stocking JSW paints, their credit terms are being revoked. Their agency was under threat that if you want to sell JSW, then go and sell JSW. We will not do business with you anymore.
Where have
Which
you
is
heard that
an
before?
existential threat, right, for a
Hmm.
small Asian Paints dealer who, uh, let's face it, has a good business. Why would he threaten that to give JSW a chance,
Yeah.
right? It didn't make sense. So JSW complained to the competition authority, and the complaint was closed after a year or so on lack of evidence, because apparently JSW couldn't prove to some Babu's satisfaction that these practices were actually in effect. So that was that, and JSW Paints became like an also ran in this. They didn't garner any significant market share, and they retained their value positioning. And uh, I wouldn't say they failed as such, but they didn't even break the top five of rankings. Let's be kind and call it that. They did
Hmm.
not break into the top five, whereas their long term plan was to be in the top three, or at least the top five, but it didn't happen. So that was like chapter one, where Asian Paints successfully defended its monopoly from a formidable challenge. And then the Aditya Birla Group, this was genius. Okay, they said, we saw what they didn't say this, but I'm guessing they saw what had happened with JSW Paints. They saw that there is a play here, just that JSW fumbled the execution, and they went for the value end of the market. Whereas the the correct thing to do here was to meet Asian Paints head on and you know compete at every segment that they are actually dominating, because what do you have to lose? That's the beauty of fighting against an incumbent, right? What do you have to lose? So straight up they committed a 10,000 crore investment. They said, we'll look at ROI in a few years, but right now upfront we are committing 10,000 crores. We're going to set up 6 massive plants because we want to be near the where the markets are, and we're going to do this. We don't care how long it takes. We're going to do this. And they executed. They brought the entire paint industry forward in that they offered longer warranties, something which Asian Paints had held off on for decades. The warranties were shameful, really. And so with Opus, Billa's brand is called Opus. They brought the warranty game forward. They said, no, we need to have at least like a 5 year warranty, I think they give now, which is a lot for paints. And they cover there's no asterisk, there's no conditions applied. They cover all the textured finishes, the everything, which Asian Paints did not do. They said, no, too much of this depends on the application of how
Hmm.
well the painter applies it, and so no warranties on this. They said, no, we will give warranties on this as well, and they're doing well. They've got a high single digit market share, and almost entirely it has been at Asian Paints expense. So जितना इनका market share बढ़ा है, Asian Paints market share has dropped by almost entirely that amount.
And where is Asian Paints in the market, share wise?
Oh, they've been hammered because for the longest time they were priced as a monopoly with like unrestricted pricing power. That favorite phrase of Warren Buffett's, because that they could always increase prices and stay even a little above inflation. It was fine, but clearly that wasn't true. So when that narrative broke of Asian Paints will always be around, the share price broke with it, and it's been languishing for quite a while now. In fact, Reliance Industries had made a strategic investment in Asian Paints a long time back, a pretty sizable investment, and they also exited last fortnight. A big deal,
Oh,
it's
deal.
like someone revoking their vote of confidence. So that spooked markets even further. Plus, it was suddenly a lot of shares coming into the market, which affected prices even more. Not investing advice. We are not experts. I am not an expert in the paint sector. This is just I enjoy a good fight. That's it.
Hmm.
I'm I don't even cover the sector really. All of this is like fresh research. So it's been interesting that now the challenge that JSW has is their existing business, which is also 2 odd years old now, is completely a value proposition, and Axo's brands are premium. So yes, they've got the
Yeah.
distribution foothold there, but this is like Daimler and Chrysler merging. It
But
it
this is also an age-old question, right? And there's so many examples on either side. Do they merge? Is it going to be a Vistara Air India type thing or a Jaguar Land Rover type thing? Do you keep this brand separate or do you merge them and mix up the
Yeah.
positioning? Interesting.
So a lot will depend on execution, how well, because they have all the challenges at once. They have the challenges of integrating an acquisition correctly. They have the challenge of it's a bloodbath right
Hmm.
now. Uh, Discounting is happening in the market. Loyalty points are being given to paint contractors. All of it comes from the P&L, right? So it's yeah, it's all out war, and it will be at least a year or two before we can. I don't think there'll be an outright winner in this, but at least that ordering of market share, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I do expect that will be shuffled up quite nicely. Will Asian Paint still end up on top? There's a good chance because it's been a recurring theme of our podcast, right? That distribution trumps almost everything else.
Yeah.
So they still have that. It's not like their business is going to go away overnight. But this is a very good reality check for them, because if you look at their businesses now, they were so comfortable in that incumbent position that they had acquired a decorative lights company. They had launched a soft furnishings range. They thought of Asian Paints as like a complete home brand, the one place you went to for everything to do with your home. So that
Yeah.
included furnishings and bed sheets and things like that. Which was it a good strategic move? In hindsight, obviously it was not. They've had to write off a big chunk of their investment in White Teak, which was a light company that they acquired. So this is good. It is creative disruption, and if it gets Asian Paints to up their own game and
Yeah.
bring a better fight to this, then it's an absolute win for the market, for consumers like you and me, and for the business landscape as a whole. This industry requires so much capex and so many boots on the ground that they you cannot have like a startup seed funded, venture backed disruptor in this space. I don't think it can be done. I'm happy to be proved wrong, but I don't think it can be done. But
There are
then
very few hardware or manufacturing disruptors anyhow, right?
people used to say the same thing about cars, so I might be wrong, right?
Which
That's what
company
makes
called?
Tesla's story so amazing. No? This was a sector with like no virtually no new entrants to speak of for 100 years, and then they broke in, and that's why markets love the story so much, and that's why they have the valuation that they do. New recent events aside, it's a remarkable thing to build a car company in the 2000s.
But it comes down to actually how do you define a startup? What is a startup versus a business? Like you could say a startup is seed funded or VC backed.
Uh, no, I thought the funding itself was incidental. What makes a startup is that the core idea of the business is inherently disruptive. For me, that is what makes a startup a startup.
Uh, would you call Flipkart a startup if it is Amazon for India? Ola if it is Uber for India?
Yes, I
Is
didn't
it
say
inherently
inherently original. I said inherently disruptive.
disruptive? Fair enough. What about the 20th D2C brand in the Makhana space or the
Yeah,
200th?
they're not startups. They don't meet my definition, and I think my definition still works even in that case, because they're riding
Yeah.
a wave, and good for them if they can get market share somehow and exit. But
I would say then my theory is that most VCs do not like to invest in what is a startup by your definition. They ride the FOMO wave.
yeah,
They nobody wants to invest in the first company that's trying to disrupt. They want to invest in the fifth company that's trying to disrupt,
yeah,
which is
and
then not a startup at all.
and so far, the bell curve of successful VCs in India
Hmm.
has been very, very skewed, and that's the reason. That's the reason for it.
Yeah.
There are like plenty of mediocre VCs in India, and because the ecosystem is so nascent, उनका career निकल जाएगा, no problem.
Hmm.
But the next generation of VCs will have to up their game. Already, it's not so easy to like even have access to the next Flipkart or the next Lenskart. It's not easy. The ecosystem is maturing really fast. It's not even close to where Silicon Valley is, but we're getting there, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. Anyhow,
Exactly.
they're all going into like Lenskart. Started out as we will disrupt traditional offline retail and then ended up getting into traditional offline retail. That's a different long story in itself. By the way, I did not end up buying Lenskart finally because they did the traditional offline retail thing is the guy who came home
Uh-huh.
then tried to upsell me from what was supposed to be the highest tier on the website. Like,
Uh,
हाँ, वो तो basic है. अब
oh,
5,000 extra खर्च करो.
acha.
I'm like, then at this point, and because their convoluted buy one, get one scheme makes you spend double the price, you
Mm-hmm.
end up buying a pair you don't really need.
Right.
I went Zeiss.
Right.
So,
Okay.
with a traditional optician.
Uh, cool. The we will only be online. Oh no, no, no. We need to be offline as well because that's where the customer is. It was so funny to watch startups and the VCs who back them do this ideological pivot, because once upon a time your entire narrative was we don't have these burdens
Silly,
of having
silly
to
burden.
carry the kirana stores and traditional retail with us, which is so inefficient and so opaque. No, Mamath is available in my nearest kirana store. That is a triumph of the
And the
kirana store.
purpose, one of the key goals of one of these any of these D2C brands is to get into traditional retail and get into a modern retail, get into the kirana stores. They'll see that as a big victory.
Mhm.
So
And that is a victory, but it is a victory for the kirana store, not for Mama. You had to come here, you had to come on my terms.
huh,
And if your products expire, you will still have to take it back.
yes, that's an interesting one for the paint industry. What's the
Yeah, it's
future? Now there's three big players, right? Three. Is
there
that
are
what is it?
actually five. The honestly, the company that I admire the most in the
Hmm.
paints industry is the one that is hardly ever in the news, except they were in the news 2 weeks back because of Vijay Mallya. he once owned. He did an LBO, a leverage buyout of Berger Paints in
Hmm.
the 90s, and then sold it to a couple of Indian founders or entrepreneurs. And I I love everything about that company. Again, not investing advice, but just how quietly they found their specialty segments, whether it's industrial, automotive, or even decorative paints, how nicely they have positioned their products, and they're just chugging along, and they're number two in the market. And you will have to really look in all the news coverage of Opus and JSW and Axo and Dulux to find mention of them. But they're there and they're number two and they're not spoken about. And that's an achievement.
Yes. Let's move on. We are half an hour in already. Wow.
Yes, yes.
Let's move on to my story number one,
Uh-huh.
which is about this very interesting book that came out few months ago, couple of months ago, called Apple in China by this reporter called Patrick McGee, who's
Hmm.
basically spent a lot of time there, a lot of time speaking to people, tracking Apple's progress in China. And it's just a fascinating book from many, many perspectives. So there is a key point here, but there's also so many subplots and subplots within subplots going on, and factors just influencing each other at the last whatever. And we have discussed in the past, a couple of weeks ago, maybe last week, that a lot of these companies, they don't know and don't care about geopolitics. They just get involved in them because they're so big, right? We discussed that from the
Yes.
Google angle. We discussed that from the Facebook angle. This one is about how, very simply, when Steve Jobs was, launching products like the iPad, the iPod, uh, started out manufacturing in the US, but
Hmm.
very quickly realized that between pricing, between quality, we need to move abroad. Went to Taiwan and basically started working with TSMC and a bunch of people in Taiwan.
Hmm.
Got very quickly pissed off that they were trying to steal IP. The Asuses and the Acers of the world,
Yeah.
basically, right, trying to steal engineers and whatnot. Foxconn came in. This book goes very deeply into Foxconn also, which is the first time I've read a history of Foxconn and their relationship with Apple. It
Hmm.
is much more intense and much more closely linked than I had expected,
Yeah.
had ever thought. And then they slowly started moving everyone to China, go set up a factory here, go set up a factory there. And eventually just increasing and increasing because China was so massively pushing that, okay, we will provide the labor. They set up a competitive system between mayors of towns about who can attract these companies, right? And then these guys, the local municipalities, are incentivized to set up a complete ecosystem, make things easier for companies, right?
Hmm.
To the extent that within a decade, 90% of Apple manufacturing was happening in China. And the interesting point is they've been saying the simplified narrative is designed in California, assembled, and subcomponents made in China.
Right.
This book argues that's completely not true at all because there are these teams within Apple which are doing, of course, the overall design, the industrial design team, Johnny Ive. There was industrial design, there was manufacturing design, there were these the procurement teams and all, and how they got enmeshed, and so much of the design also was being pushed by the Chinese companies, by Foxconn and all the subsystems. And
Hmm.
Apple was sending so many engineers to China on just a daily basis that basically they were United's largest customer for business class. And basically United was at one point just running a San Francisco Shanghai flight.
Shuttle.
But effectively, yeah, yeah, yeah. Because Apple had just committed, we'll buy out your business class seats,
Entire business class.
direct flight running, throwing money at the problem, but of course making so much money back home and saving so much.
Hmm.
And Apple didn't want to have any single points of failure in its supply chain, so therefore they ended up building the whole ecosystem within China so
Yeah.
that they are not dependent on one company, bringing money and training to more and more Chinese manufacturers. And in time, there was just nowhere else these products could be made. And I'll come to the India part also, where it comes in. And basically it argues with a lot of data that Apple has basically built the last 10 years of or 15 years of technological development in China. Obviously, not to minimize China's role in it, the government's role in it, in pushing all this,
Mm-hmm.
but the Chinese government has done very well to attract tech companies, including Apple, to China, and
Yeah.
then strong arm them into bringing more R&D. Once they also realize that Apple doesn't have a choice anymore, they
Mm.
can't do this anywhere else. So yeah, so this book argues that all the Xiaomi's of the world, all the BYDs of the world, of China, that is, those engineers are all coming out of people who have learned from Apple suppliers
Mm-hmm.
in China. And therefore, now these guys are overtaking, like, Xiaomi exists, this book argues, as it does, because Apple went there.
Yeah.
And there are these pivot points which China used to strong arm Apple into putting more. So starts with an example of this consumer. This is a really interesting story, which has multiple angles. On Consumer Day in 2013, the
Mm-hmm.
Chinese government basically, in its communist magazine, the Mouthpiece, came out with Apple is not treating Chinese consumers fairly by not honoring warranties and not giving the same warranty terms that they give abroad. And Apple was like, what? What just happened? Tim Cook was like completely taken aback. Where is this coming from?
Mm.
One is, of course, this is the government trying to use a public magazine, their mouthpiece, to put pressure on China, on Apple to do more. But also, where it came from is an interesting story that when Apple started selling in China, they opened their first store very late
Yeah.
because they were like, yeah, look at the average per capita income in this country.
Mm.
Who's going to be buying like $800, $1,000 phones and and tablets, same price, right?
Mm-hmm.
Till they actually opened and everything was always sold out on day one. Everything was always, whatever they sent there was sold out on day one. Then they opened another store. But the supply demand gap was so huge that there were these people who were effectively running a mafia who would line people up, pay people to line up in front of the Apple store for days on end.
Right.
They would literally bus people in from rural areas to stand in front of the store for 2 days, line up, and they would get paid like a few dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And these guys would then take all these phones and tablets they were buying and take them to the rest of the country and sell at a massive premium.
Right.
And Apple obviously knew what was going on. This book goes very deeply into the guy who was actually running the Chinese supply chain operations and
Nice.
the stores, right? But they couldn't do anything. What do you do?
Mm.
Because everyone's in on the action. Everyone, like, and everyone knows what's going on. So what happened was these groups kept getting bigger and more powerful. Apple
Mm-hmm.
tried pushing back, nothing happened. So then these groups, they continued. At one point, they realized that they can actually just send people to the US, buy them where the taxes are lower. Because obviously, Apple's policy has always been we will add on the import duty and any state taxes and
Yeah.
then raise the price accordingly, right?
Mm.
So these guys realized we can just smuggle in phones. So they would send people to the US to buy lots and lots from the states with the lowest taxes,
Mm-hmm.
smuggle these phones in, uh, burn the chip that was identifying where this phone was bought from and which phone that was. And because these phones are also, a lot of them were carrier locked and whatnot, right?
Right.
They would burn that chip and then take them to the stores, the Apple stores in China, and look, it's not working. And literally hundreds of phones at a time. Like literally, there's this huge group of people, one phone in each hand. This phone is not working. You need to honor my warranty.
Mm.
So then, first few phones, they would send them to Singapore and whatnot for testing. What is going on here?
Right.
Till this, then later added a chip to actually track which phone this is and where it was sold, and realized that why are our phones being sold in Delaware and whatnot being brought in for warranty
Multi
returns in
claims
China?
in China.
And these complaints went up to the Communist Party, and the Communist Party then said in 2013 that Apple is not honoring warranties.
Hmm. Nice.
Wow. So yeah, this book is about how it's all become a Faustian bargain. Apple has no choice now. It's been training their people. At some point, they started leaning in. Tim Cook went and posed in front of the Forbidden City with Mr. Xi Jinping, right, and started telling them, "Look, we are investing so much. Basically, please like us.
Hmm.
We will invest more. We will do more R&D. We'll spend like they committed some $275 billion over 5 years. They said we've already spent that amount in the last 5 years, and we will continue spending that amount
Hmm.
in training your people." And at some point, they just got strong armed to do more and more and more and more. And one specific instance of how they created Huawei in that sense. That's what this book argues, right? That
Mhm.
all the engineers, high level engineers at Huawei came from the suppliers of
Apple.
uh, Apple, right? That these teams at Huawei and BYD and all would literally just stand in the parking lot and like, I'll give you a signing bonus right now, just come. Right, be doing that. And Huawei became so popular, and they were starting to become popular in the US, and then Trump took over and effectively just banned Huawei instantly.
Yeah.
So Tim Cook gained a few years of dominance in the US thanks to Trump coming in. So yeah, then it gets into how now Apple is trying to diversify. They're desperate, which is where a lot of the India moves are also coming in.
Mhm.
But right now, a lot of the stuff happening in India, also this book argues, is just coming in from China, then add one component, do some assembly, blah blah blah, and slowly trying to improve. Fascinating book.
Awesome. Was there a tipping point when the balance of power shifted from China needed Apple to Apple needed China?
There were
Is
a couple which were engineered by the CCP, nicely engineered by the CCP.
I have to read this book now.
You have to read this book; it's fascinating. So
Brilliant, man. I Okay, so knowing as much as you do now about just what a marvel it
Marvel,
is
it is.
that we can buy an iPhone for 60, 70,000 bucks, and it is basically the pinnacle of material design, tech design, all of that crammed into such a small device. Do you realistically think that India or Vietnam or Thailand or Mexico could replicate this entire supply chain in 10 years?
No, because a large part of what this book goes into and talks about in detail, not just says, but talks about in detail, is how much the state was responsible for making all this stuff happen. Like even the low cost labor, even the Foxconn factories where people are well, Foxconn is putting up nets so that people don't
Mhm.
commit suicide,
Yeah, yeah.
right? For the authorities to look away because there's a competition between those industrial zones. People, the state in itself, the local authorities are busing in people from rural towns. They are putting in that effort,
Mhm.
and they know that this is low wage, whatever. But there are states competing or zones competing with each other. So there is a huge role of the state and a huge role of violating just a lot of norms uh, that I don't think either Vietnam or India. Like one interesting point here is that like there are unions in India,
Yeah.
so yeah, it still hold a decent amount of power. But maybe we don't deserve like a $600 phone. Maybe we deserve an $800 phone. If good, no, people should earn more. People making these phones, people putting in the effort.
No, that's not gonna happen. As long as somebody is offering the entire ecosystem where a $600 phone is possible, don't
The
think.
thing is, what you realize after reading this book is it's a huge, huge ecosystem. A lot of things have to come together. Even in China, like 20 years ago, it was very different, right?
Hmm.
Can it be recreated? Very difficult.
And I'm not even talking about the fabs.
Yeah.
That's it's a pipe dream. I'm not even talking about the fabs. I'm talking about everything else. The the camera technology, the battery technology.
No.
Yeah.
Subsystems, sure. Everything, no.
Hmm.
Because like even Apple right now, their own silicon is effectively TSMC.
Yeah.
They don't have a fab in the US. They're trying to put a fab in the US, which is also TSMC trying to put a fab in the US.
Hmm.
but not working so far. Those experiments, they're not really making too much progress. Costs are way too high. Those consistencies, the kind of labor you need, the kind of trained, that's the irony, right? Like we would think, oh, the R&D brains are coming from the US, and the manufacturing, the low cost labor, blah blah blah, is happening in China. But now they're shipping in people in reverse from China to the US to train people to run the fab. So the level of state involvement you need in
Mm.
India, though, I don't see happening,
Yeah,
both in a good way and a bad way, both in terms of labor protections, which, in my very, very lefty view, are absolutely needed, but also in a bad way that that level of organization that's needed is not there.
I don't know if that's good or bad. I need to read the book either ways.
You should read the book.
Yeah, I'll do that. Mm, Story two.
Story two.
I'm confused. I have two lined up, but for paucity of time, we'll pick one. So I will pick the CFA story. The CFA is a certification, the Chartered Financial Analyst certification. The CFA Institute is based in the US. It's considered the premier investment analyst charter in the world. It's a globally recognized designation, and it carries or used to carry a lot of heft. The results just came out uh, sometime in 22, when so much of other change was happening as well. The CFA Institute basically revamped the entire approach to the certification itself, and they said we're going to have different tracks, and you can specialize whether you want to do private wealth or they had different tracks basically, bringing it closer to the MBA model. And this kind of went against the whole point of having a broad certification that covered everything.
Yep.
Like I for reference, I've cleared all three levels of the exam, although I've never got around to getting my charter. But I have cleared all three levels of the exam in 22, 23, and 24. So I was in the last batch that wrote the old exam, and where it was the same exam that everybody wrote, all the candidates there. And already what has happened in the last 4 or 5 years is you have a glut, just like in the Ivy League and other MBA colleges, you have a glut of Indian and Chinese candidates, and they vastly outnumber other
Hmm.
nationalities. So the results came out yesterday, and I was on the CFA subreddit, which I was a regular on for like 3 years. I went back there yesterday after a long time, and a good number of people who passed and people who didn't all said the same thing. I relied on ChatGPT for my prep, and it was super helpful. And we've spoken about this before.
Hmm.
A good annual report studied by a good analyst needs
Yep.
a week. Needs a week to build a model out of, to find any hidden landmines. And I've actually tried this. The one use case that I have found personally for AI is, I've tried this. I've run summaries of annual statements that I have already studied myself, and the result is good enough. It's 95, 96% of the way there. The outcome of here, analyze this.
Hmm.
Earnings calls, I think, except for the people who are actually on the call, nobody reads earnings call summaries, earnings calls transcripts anymore. It's entirely AI. The entire entry level, the first 5 years of uh, grudge work that analysts do when they enter this industry, it can be done by AI much better, much faster, and much cheaper. I cherish everything I learned about finance, because that's the beauty of the CFA. What was the CFA syllabus then, right? That you had a grounding in everything finance. You had
Yeah.
the foundation and maybe half of the ground floor built, and then it was up to you of what you want to specialize in. You pick that, you try and go and work there, or self study and deepen your knowledge in that particular alleyway, um, or whatever. But the core intent of the certification was to be as broad as possible, and weirdly they chose to do this. So now you have not only I am a CFA or I have the charter, but also I have the charter, yes, and I specialized in private wealth. Whereas this is, you know, institutional investing, and therefore my skills don't entirely translate here. So do I need to do a bridge course or whatever? It's just unnecessarily convoluted.
It's like
And
majors, right? Then, like even in an MBA, if I'm doing a
yes,
marketing, if I'm
exactly.
majoring in marketing, then I will get apply for a marketing job. I won't be able to do a finance job.
Huh. And if you do land a finance job, then you will require a transition period where either you're
Yeah.
educated by the company or you educate yourself on what are the accepted bare minimum here, that I need to know these things, and no one's going to teach them to me even on the first day of the job. So weird. I don't know why the CF Institute went the way it did. One last aside, I don't have any brilliant insight here, but there's a whole cottage industry of prep providers for CFA, and within that also consolidation has happened because it's mostly videos, right? Very
Hmm.
few people do one-on-one tutoring, although those are available as well. There are some brilliant Indian tutors who have students in like Brazil and the US and the UK, and they offer one-to-one tutoring from here, from Ludhiana, if I remember correctly. There's one guy who's really, really popular on the CFA subreddit. But that aside, even the prep materials, consolidation has happened there. You have private equity buyouts of Mark Meldrum. He was like considered the best of the best, and all his materials, his videos, his study materials are now owned by a private equity company. And Meldrum himself has retired to the Bahamas or something. So yeah, it's fascinating that the rules of finance apply to the cottage industry around the premier finance certification as well. No particular insights here, like I said, but the space is fucked because of AI.
No,
It's
this
perfect.
is this tracks with every other industry I'm seeing, and like for example, content writing also, right? Okay, so content writing is earlier in this space than pretty much anything else. It's other than coding, I don't know much about, but content
Mhm.
writing, because there's so much SEO slop already on the internet written by humans that this trained on, right?
Yeah.
It's an easy area for me at least to judge because I've been
Hmm.
watching. Juniors need to do a lot of grunt work to
Yeah.
gain the skills required to become senior, to become a good senior, to become a knowledgeable, intuitive, someone who understands the space, right? You need that. You need to do that grunt work.
Yeah.
AI can absolutely do that grunt work. It
Hmm.
can write slop. SEO over the last 10 years has been slop, right? It just is not meant to educate people. It's been mostly how do I manipulate Google's algo to get on the top of the rankings.
It's no longer intended for humans, right?
That's been like 15 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, early like Web 1.0 was people writing for humans. Then it was humans writing for bots. Now it's bots writing for bots.
What?
Third point is that it is all universally terrible. Yeah, right. It is universally terrible, but again, no one's bothered, right? No, people have even given up reviewing these articles because why bother? It's meant for Google.
Hmm.
I firmly believe if you don't put in the grunt work early on, then you will not have those skills. And this is exactly what you're saying on the CFS side. If I am using GPT for everything,
Hmm.
right, doing a analysis of a DRHP, if it takes you a week, and now you can just cut it out of GPT.
Yeah.
It doesn't really have the context that you need to give it, but let's say you perfect the prompt to give it all the context. Second is, yeah, like I will gain so much by just studying that myself. I will learn. This way, I'm not learning. I'm doing the work, but I'm not learning anything.
Hmm.
So, yeah, we're fucked. We have stopped learning. And
Using the DRHP example itself, I know it's mainly done by lawyers. Oh, law, another profession
hmm,
where the grunt work is basically being uh, given entirely to AI models now.
yeah,
And we're going to have terrible lawyers in 10 years. But anyways, I know most DRHPs are written almost entirely by lawyers, but strategic decision direction is still provided by investment bankers. And what kind of strategic direction will an investment banker provide if in the last 10 years he hasn't read or she hasn't read a single DRHP cover to cover? If you haven't read it, how can you write it?
You need, like, it's important, right? Like, you will tell me better than I would know that half of it is about what the company is trying to hide, as it is about what the company is trying to
Which
say.
is also an art, and which you need to learn by
Yeah.
seeing things tucked into uh, small nooks and crannies of the DRHP. It's That is so much of the joy of getting to a DRSP is you meeting a company for the first time, right? And they are mandated by law to disclose everything. But there is disclosing and there is disclosing. And that's where your knowledge and intuition and experience comes in. And here you're entirely skipping that part. So how will you then get good at the concealing when if you need it down the line? It's sad.
Yeah. So as an entire generation, we'll like just stop learning. And I blame the older generation because they are the ones keep productivity ke gain mein.
Hmm.
I will save some money. I will use AI. I don't care about the quality of my work. Again, that maxim still stands, right? Why would I bother reading something that no one could be bothered to write? So that still stands. Ki if everyone's using AI to generate, nobody wants to read anything written by AI, right? Like it means if a client asks me to do some to analyze some whatever, right? I don't know the scenario, and
Hmm.
I am just running it through GPT and bringing it back in 5 minutes. A, the client can do that himself.
Yeah.
What value are you bringing in the long run than any more, right? Unless you are that expert on top, like experienced whatever, and you are again using AI as an assistant,
Hmm.
and you are that intelligent person on top. So that's a very, very common use case. We do that. We use a lot of AI in the back end, right? And we tell our clients, you there will be an intelligent person on top, an
Hmm.
experienced person. But that is also sad because the next generation is not being trained.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That
we're fucked.
the pipeline is broken, and there's no incentive to rebuild it
Yeah,
as of so.
unless OpenAI runs out of money quickly.
But even then, an inferior alternative will take its place. It will not
Yeah,
go.
fair.
This this is how it is. The which cliche would you like? The cat is out of the bag, the genie is out of the bottle, Pandora's box is open, whatever.
Give me five more.
Pick your choice. Give the prompt to your
AI to just work.
uh,
My story number two. I foreshadowed it by saying OpenAI might run out of money. My story
uh,
number two is on the dance that's going on right now between OpenAI and Microsoft and SoftBank. Microsoft came in early. Now SoftBank is the new suitor. They have promised a lot of money. And I will have to go into some background, which, full disclosure, it was going so deep that I wrote 2 pages and then typed 2 pages and then I gave it to OpenAI to, can you summarize this for me? But also a summation of like lots of articles that it gets very complicated. So first, OpenAI parent organization is a not for profit.
mm-hmm,
OpenAI Incorporated, and it holds 100% control over OpenAI LP. So it manages the board, it manages everything, right? And OpenAI LP is it's for profit, but it's a for profit capped entity. You might know better, but yeah, there is a profits are capped at like 100x return for early backers types, right?
yeah.
And lower caps for later ones.
It's a
Non-profit
very
parent.
unusual structure, but
Hmm?
yes, it's a very unusual structure, but yeah, along those lines.
Yeah. So OpenAI Inc., the non-profit, has complete control over this.
Mm-hmm,
Investors hold equity in the LP.
mm-hmm.
Microsoft is the largest investor into LP. We don't know its percentage, but Microsoft has no control over the LP, even if they funded it.
Yeah.
Now, SoftBank wants the parent company to approve or facilitate partnerships that would end up conflicting with Microsoft's interests in OpenAI LP.
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft's issue is with this for profit direction, what partnerships it can make. Microsoft, so there was this chaos in 2023 when Sam Altman was kicked out by the board, that
Mm-hmm.
he's taking it too far into the for profit direction. Two
Yeah.
days later, Sam Altman came back and everybody else was pretty much is gone now.
The
They're
board
running
was
their
ousted. Yeah.
everybody else is pretty much running now their own AI companies, which will come out with a product in 2035, but they're already sitting at like some crazy billion-dollar valuations.
Valuation. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So Microsoft fears that OpenAI's non-profit board could push the for-profit LP into partnerships or directions that don't align with Microsoft's business goals, even though they don't have power. So, for example, Microsoft gets Azure exclusivity for a lot of OpenAI tools and API priority. That is going away. OpenAI is anyhow now trying to move away from that Microsoft exclusivity
Mm-hmm.
because OpenAI has been saying that Microsoft is not giving us server access. At the back end, it's running on Azure. So
Right.
Microsoft is both the customer and the service provider to OpenAI. So the latest sticking point is whether Microsoft would have access to the IP behind Windsurf, which is a coding startup that OpenAI wants to buy. But Microsoft owns GitHub, which is a direct competitor to Windsurf. So Microsoft has access to all of OpenAI's technology. Basically, OpenAI needs Microsoft's go ahead for a restructuring that OpenAI wants to achieve. The Information, which is this tech news website in the US, is reporting that OpenAI wants Microsoft to forego its rights to future profits in exchange for a roughly 33% stake in the restructured company. Microsoft doesn't want restructuring anyhow. Now, in this comes AGI. There is this clause in the original thing between Microsoft and OpenAI that Microsoft loses a lot of control, profit share once OpenAI hits AGI. So it was then structured as okay, we will build this all together till you hit AGI.
Hmm.
AGI or artificial general intelligence has no definition because it's fuzzy, right? Like it's an artificial god. How do you define God? What can God do? Do
Hmm.
you lay out parameters that can it physically move out from the laptop and kill someone? There is only one definition of AGI. Of all the talk we hear about AGI in the world, that artificial general intelligence is the biggest threat, and simultaneously we have to achieve it to free humanity of all and give everyone Ezra Klein levels of abundance.
Mm-hmm.
The only definition that exists is in a contract between Microsoft and OpenAI that says AGI will be achieved when OpenAI hits $100 billion in profits. So the only definition of artificial god is when it makes us $100 billion in profits.
Right.
So Microsoft is very worried that when that happens, they just completely lose everything. OpenAI is very far away from $100 billion in profits. They are currently making some $3 to $5 billion in revenue
Mm-hmm.
and losing about 20 odd $billion, including training data costs. So yesterday, Masa said that he's completely all in on OpenAI. Masayoshi Son, the head owner, president, whatever he is of SoftBank, with its planned investments for $33.2 billion, like still on track. But
Mm-hmm.
on the side, he has told them that look, you need to convert into mostly for profit, practically for profit. And in the meanwhile, Microsoft and OpenAI are having open battles now, practically, where they're like literally threatening to walk off and close the deal and kill the agreement altogether. But practically speaking, OpenAI can't do anything without Microsoft's go ahead. They can't do any restructuring, which Masa is asking for,
Mm-hmm.
because even though the board has full control, Microsoft, I believe, owns 49% of the for profit. But again, I'm not sure of that figure because there's lots of varied figures floating all around.
Right.
So that is where things are right now. Meanwhile, as an aside, Meta is trying to poach people from OpenAI. They are stealing engineers. So Sam Altman said that Meta had offered $100 million signing bonuses to top OpenAI executives. People ask Meta about this. Are you really offering these bonuses?
Mm-hmm.
And Andrew Bosworth, Meta CTO, said at the meeting that Sam is being dishonest. He is suggesting that we are doing this for every single person. We are not. That's some denial. We are not offering every single person that we are trying to hire from OpenAI $100 million signing bonus.
Uh,
So, yeah, that's what's been going on. I thought it's interesting for me to at least learn what's going on.
I I thought we had a well accepted, well established definition for AGI. No, when Skynet becomes self-aware and launches the nukes, that's the exact point.
Yeah, so the first nuke counts as AGI, or does it have to be like 10 nukes? On which
No, there's like
countries?
a 14-15 minute gap if memory serves. I haven't seen T2 in a very long time, but there's like a 15-minute gap. They give it in minutes. Skynet became self-aware here at this time, and in 15 minutes it decided nope, humanity is not necessary.
Yeah,
Which, yeah, if a new entity came in and absorbed the internet, I think they would reach the same conclusion pretty fast.
have
No.
you seen these people?
No, control or delete. Hard reset. This isn't going to work.
Next planet, please. Yeah, so that was story number two. What's been going on? It's interesting, and there are specific deadlines in place. End of this year, there has to be an agreement, or SoftBank won't invest. And in any case, OpenAI does not have the money to go beyond this year,
Mhm.
and
I'm
Microsoft is
puzzled
also
at why that $100 billion mark was decided as okay. If you reach here in revenues, you must have done something spectacular, and that something must be AGI. And so this definition is good enough for us. Weird. Yeah. Speaking of Meta, they launched more uh, of those smart glasses with
Hmm?
Oakley and which was the other brand?
Ray-Bans. And now they're in
Ray-Bans.
India, like, Ray-Bans are the old ones. Acha, they've
Ray-Bans
launched
are the existing ones.
all
Oakley is
Exotica, right?
coming,
In any case.
and Prada, I think. Yeah, it was Oakley for sports and a luxury brand, and the mainstay is going to be Ray-Ban. I think it's Prada. So yeah, so you need to now be aware in public of these cameras have like a small indicator light that comes on when the camera is on. Do you know the story of Japanese phone companies and camera sounds? They're
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like, yeah, if you buy a phone in Japan even today, it has a legally hard coded super loud shutter sound for the camera, so everyone around knows that a picture has just been taken, which has a very skeezy history, but yeah.
But also, how do you do that for video?
Hmm.
This person is recording a video. Your attention, please. This person is recording a video. Please pay attention. This person is recording a video. Toot, 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 toot.
Uh, yeah, weird, man. I don't know what to
Times
say.
are ahead.
Do you think realistically ChatGPT will run out of money anytime soon?
Yeah.
We don't know how much runway they have, right?
It's
What-
like this. So again, obviously, I don't know the future, but runway wise is one thing, but they do need to spend on training. Training is very, very expensive. Engineer costs are rising. If Meta is swooping in, then obviously these guys will have to start paying more.
Yeah.
Then the other thing is, who are the people everyone runs to for money when there are no options left? The Saudis and Masa.
Hmm.
And they've also announced that Stargate thing because they want to show Trump that they're willing to sign a deal with him. Like, they want to present him a deal.
Mm-hmm.
So where OpenAI has to invest 20 billion and Masa has to invest 20 billion, which is unrelated to this money that they're talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, there is the actual data centers running out of money, which was that company we discussed, right? I have forgotten the name now. The one that IPO'd like 3 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's like, where's the revenue? Is the question. Even in the other companies promoting a lot of AI, like Microsoft and AWS, saying that they're now making money on AI. Salesforce, they're basically just repurposing existing revenues by tacking on. Acha, now we've put Copilot AI into your word, so now we'll count some of your word, whatever, as AI revenue, right? So revenues are still small. Like we're
Which,
talking still
if
four,
you're
5 billion.
an if you're an experienced analyst, then you know to recognize those kind of shenanigans. But if you grew up on ChatGPT, you don't.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry.
We are old men yelling at clouds. Go learn. So yeah, there is. So they've gone to the Saudis and they've gone to SoftBank already, right? Saudis are in the US talking about raising money. SoftBank is trying to syndicate this $40 billion. It's saying we will put in 20, we'll syndicate the rest 20. But
Mhm.
they are also trying to raise money elsewhere. They just SoftBank made a lot of money on the ARM IPO,
Yeah.
but sure there are other investments also. So they have to figure out revenue very very quickly, a huge jump in revenue, which doesn't seem to be happening so far because at the same time this is all becoming commoditized. If
Mm.
like DeepSeek can run on my M4 on my Mac Mini, right? So I'm not using DeepSeek. But again, we've discussed this, right? I've had a Chat GPT Plus account running for $20 for like ages now. Like, all my chat history is there, so I'm okay paying $20. If it goes up to 40, I'll start thinking.
Mm.
If it goes up to 200, absolutely no. Right. So some people are paying $200 for the Chat GPT Pro account, but I'm assuming that's tiny numbers, or those are just the biggest most Enthu fans. Is not crossing over into the real world
Mm.
because people ascribe a mental whatever to SaaS, right?
Correct. And going past that will be quite difficult.
Yeah, yeah. It's a B2B SaaS tool.
Mm.
Again, and we've discussed the commercial side, like B2C is where a lot of the mass money is for the valuations to justify the valuations, right?
Mhm.
What are the B2C use cases for AI that people are paying money for? I still haven't seen that.
A substitute for Google
Nobody's going to pay
search.
for that. People will go back to Google if you start charging.
Mm.
There are these search engines, Kagi. There was this Nav or Navi or no, that's the Avatar thing. Uh, some search engine with an N.
Mhm.
Tried building a subscription model for search.
Search. Okay.
Very, very niche if they're around.
Yeah.
Like a paywall is a very hard thing to get beyond.
Mm.
A lot of people will just stop. You charge $2 and for everyone on ChatGPT Plus, and a lot of people will just drop off.
Mm.
Their monthly average usage will just tank, and twenty
Not take
dollars
that
is a
admit.
big whatever. Hmm?
If WhatsApp starts charging $1 a month, will people pay?
I hope they do. I hope they start charging, and I hope people stop using it.
$1 a month. Surely.
Pay by the message. Ideal life. WhatsApp starts charging by the group message. Oh,
Charged by the good
you took
morning message.
abundance. Beta time, where are you? I have discovered what you need to do. So yeah, but WhatsApp has crossed over that uh, hump of becoming a true B2C tool,
Hmm.
right?
And it's indispensable now.
It's indispensable now, but
Yeah.
actually, yeah, a lot of people will stop using it.
Really?
I do think, even if they charge like 80 rupees a month,
Uh-huh.
lot of people will drop off.
Move to Telegram and the like.
Yeah, whatever's free. Great, no? People will start using Signal. Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So OpenAI is very, very far from that. And the valuations to justify what they're raising and the valuation they're trying to raise at
Hmm.
for a B2B SaaS tool, there's no way. No matter how big it grows, even if it grows to Salesforce levels, no matter if the whole industry grows like that, still. And if they're all commoditized, and they are like in most people's mind, you ask them, Acha, unless you're a power user. If I ask
They're
my
interchangeable.
co-founder, he'll be
Yeah.
able to tell Claude versus Manus versus GPT versus
Hmm.
five other tools, right? Most people can't.
They're interchangeable for
Hmm.
us. Yeah. True.
So yeah,
All right. One last thing, and then we can close. WhatsApp is going to start ads very soon. I think they have started already. Uh, Not in messages. They've been very clear that's one line we're not going to cross. So expect that in a year or two. But in WhatsApp statuses. when you're
Who
seeing the
uses what?
status.
Who, like, I do
Oh,
see status updates, whatever, but I don't see them. Is again, that's just the thing that seems to have people are doing it, right? But it doesn't seem to have taken off, like culturally. Like, who talks about what their WhatsApp status is?
no, there's, oh my God, there's a whole subculture around this. There's a whole industry around this. That it's a very big deal. It's a very, very big deal.
A WhatsApp status.
WhatsApp statuses. Yes, it is. Uh, for instance, if we are friends and it's your birthday,
Hmm.
and I put up or don't put up a happy birthday message with your picture in a group photo and a crown on your head to indicate that it is, in fact, Vineet's birthday, and that, in fact, is Vineet. That's important. If I do it, it means something. If I don't do it, also, it means something.
Yeah, I've seen that on Insta, but yeah. But no, so
It happens on
ads,
WhatsApp.
yeah, ads work in India. People don't want to pay, so they'll watch ads. Like
Yeah.
Insta, we see so many ads, right? Like Insta's full of ads.
Hmm.
People watch ads here. They won't pay.
Yeah.
Partly because even if it's UPI, there is still friction around. Like because we don't have subscription payments, smooth whatever in India. We have more
WhatsApp is
scams than
already integrated with UPI. Implementing it will be very easy.
oh God, I am not going to use WhatsApp Pay ever. I will go to their office and deposit 80 rupees, 80 rupees and 21 paise. Also, if you want, I will go deposit in change. I am not going to use WhatsApp Pay ever. That is one bridge I am not going to cross.
But it exists, is
Mhm.
what I'm saying.
But
Yeah.
again, I don't know anyone. Actually, how would I know if people are using WhatsApp Pay? How would I know?
Hmm.
It's a GPay and PhonePe and Paytm market.
Yeah.
So
Anyway, I think we
yeah,
have
yeah. Let's wrap up.
drifted quite a lot. Yeah. This
See
was
you
fun.
guys.
See you next week.
See you
Bye
guys
bye.
next week. Yes. Bye bye.